welcome back to Broke Boy Custom. My name is Alex, and today we're going to talk about a couple of simple things that you guys can do to keep your car well maintained. I'm going to start off this list with the easiest things and slowly work my way towards the more difficult thing. And these are going to be a couple of things that you guys can do in your driveway and that you guys won't need a whole bunch of special tools to do. Just want to give a shout out to all my subscribers. We have reached 100 subscribers and I'm very excited about that. I'm very excited to keep growing and I'm very excited to keep providing you guys with content. Now the first thing is something super simple. Most times you won't even need tools to do, and that is your air filters. Now most cars have two filters, your engine filter and your cabin filter, and they both are usually very easy to check. The engine filter usually has a couple of clips and you pull it up and you can pull it out and see for yourself how dirty it is. You might want to have a vacuum on hand because oftentimes a lot of dirt and a lot of leaves get sucked up into the engine air box, so you want to clean that out. In the cabin filter, all you got to do most times is either right underneath the glove box or you have to take the glove box door out. So look it up for your vehicle specifically. Usually a couple of tabs and it comes right down, and it's right there. It's very easy. I've worked at a lot of dealerships that charge well over $100 for an engine filter and cabin filter. The filters are like 10 bucks a piece, 20 bucks a piece, and it makes no sense to pay $100 for someone to go pop, pop, pop and get it done real quick. Now, the next thing that you guys should do to make sure your car is well maintained and starts every time is your battery. Batteries tend to go right around every 5 years or so. It depends on how much you drive the car and how good of a battery that's installed in the car. For example, because of gas prices, I started driving the Miata more, and I left the truck in the shop for a few weeks and the battery died and it did not recover. I bought the battery like 8 months ago and the warranty was only for 6 months, so go figure. I ended up buying a better battery so that way I had a better warranty and I had like a 1.5 year warranty versus a 6-month warranty. If your car is running and driving, it could still need a battery. Batteries are rated for twice the cranking amps it takes to start a vehicle. Back in the day when cars are carbureted and you lived in a cold climate, a lot of times it'll take a long time to start your vehicle. You gotta do the choke, you gotta hit the pedal, and it's always a whole ritual with older vehicles that are carbureted. Standard was whatever cold cranking amps it takes to start the battery, the manufacturer will recommend double that, just so that when you're doing the long cranks, you have plenty of power to keep turning the engine over to eventually get it started. Your battery will start getting bad and you will probably still have like 1.5, and then you start to get to exactly the amount of cranking amps you need, and that can get kind of dicey. You might take a trip to the grocery store, and when you leave, your car won't start because you had exactly the amount of cranking amps you needed to start the car. It's very simple to check your battery. Any auto parts store will do a free test to your battery. They have a machine, go out right out to your car, put the machine right up to your battery, and they'll test it right then and there. Batteries usually are around $100 or so, depending on how big the battery is. I know the Miata's battery was about 130, and the truck's battery was about 110. Most auto parts stores will also install them for free for you, unless you have a Dodge Stratus. While you're getting your battery replaced, make sure you just check your terminals, make sure that they are clean, make sure that the wires to them aren't pulling off, make sure that they're nice and tight. Once you tighten them up, make sure they stay tight to your battery. And remember to don't skip out on your battery hold down. It may seem kind of useless, but it can save you a lot of trouble. The last thing you need is for you to hit a really big bump and your battery hops up and grounds itself on your hood. And I'm looking at all you Miata folks out there with dented fender, and overall it'll help the life of your battery. Batteries in general don't like vibrations too much, and them being loose will just have them rattle more than if they were secured to the car. Next thing on the list you're going to need some tools for, and that will be your serpentine belt. Serpentine belt is the belt that drives your alternator, sometimes your water pump, power steering pump, so on and so forth. Losing that belt will most often leave you stranded. You'll have to rely on what battery power is left because your alternator is no longer running and keeping the car alive. You won't have any power steering unless you have electric power steering, and your engine will overheat. Very simple to check it. Pop your hood open and look for the crankshaft and check the belt. Check it for any signs of tear, any signs of dry rot, any signs of dry rot. Any signs of dry rot. If your belts are making noise, you really want to start taking a look at them. They do sell very cheap depth gauges for the serpentine belts these days, because newer belts have a tendency to just wear down the teeth on the belt, and the belt may look fine, but it might not be gripping as well because the teeth are worn out. Next thing you want to do is check your tension on the belt. If you can move the belt a dramatic amount, it's probably too loose. A lot of older vehicles have manual tensioners, so you should be able to adjust them. A lot of modern cars these days do have automatic tensioners, so it's a spring-loaded tensioner. They don't often go bad, so I wouldn't replace it just because you're doing your belt. But if you replace your belt and your belt's still making noise, it's most likely the tensioner. Important thing that you should remember is to draw the routing of the belt, take pictures, because once you have that belt off, it can get really confusing really fast. A lot of front wheel drive cars, it also helps to pull the passenger wheel off, or on some old Hondas, the driver wheel, depending on which way the motor's turned. And there's usually an access panel that you can remove to get access to the belt from the wheel well. Look up if it's recommended for your car to have a special tension tool. It's a good thing to have. I've always gotten away with wrenches, but some cars you really do need that tool. One very important thing that not a lot of people check is their front end. You will need a jack for this, and you'll probably need a lug wrench and a bunch of tools for this, but it is a very important thing that you check front end is tight. Most times you feel your car being unstable a little bit, maybe wanders a little bit, or sometimes you just can't tell. Every once in a while, maybe once a year or so, you jack up your front wheels and see if there's any play in it. Get your wheels off the ground completely so that you can spin them. Make sure your e-brake's on before you do that. Make sure that you have chalked the rear wheels when you do that, so that way the car doesn't roll. Because if you're doing this on your driveway, and it's a slope driveway, and your car's front wheel drive, and you take the front wheels off, your car no longer has park. So make sure do all the proper safety precautions so your car doesn't roll away from you. So you get your wheels off the ground, you're gonna grab each side of the wheel, and you're gonna do one of these things. Basically, you're gonna give pressure and try to see if it moves. Now, obviously, if it moves with the steering wheel and the other wheel, that's totally fine. But what you want to see is that that wheel is moving independently from your steering or from your suspension. And you also want to do it from the top of the wheel and the bottom of the wheel, and that'll help you check if it's your ball joint or not. Most often, it's your ball joint and your tie rods. And while you have it in the air, even if it's all tight, check to see if they have any grease fittings on them. Check to see if you see any tearing in the boots, because if the boots are torn, very soon it's going to need new ball joints and or tie rods, depending on what is torn. If it has grease fittings, you can get a grease gun from any auto parts store for around 30 to 50 bucks, depending on the auto parts store, and a tube of grease. That tube of grease will last you a while on your own personal car. A lot of newer cars have sealed ball joints and tie rods, so you don't have to worry about that at all. But a lot of times when you replace them, they have grease fittings on them. While you have your wheels in the air, it's always good to check your suspension as well. Make sure your shocks aren't leaking. Make sure your springs are seating on there properly. Quick callback to an old Brook Boy custom video where I had to replace springs on my Grand Marquis because the spring literally broke on itself and the car was leaning, and I was wondering what all the clanking was about. Quick reminder that if your vehicle is in the air by a hydraulic jack by itself, please don't climb underneath it unless you have jack stands on the car. Hydraulic jacks are just known to fail, they're known to slip. You're really betting your health and well-being on some hydraulic seals, and maybe the jack isn't tight all the way or something dumb like that happens. Don't want to see anyone get hurt or working on their car. Now at this point, you change your air filters, you change your belts, you check your front ends, you already have the wheels up in the air, you might as well check your brakes. A lot of cars you can check through the rim and kind of have an idea how thick your brake pad is, but the absolute best way to check is to pull your wheel off, and you already have your wheels in the air, right? So might as well pull them off. Quick note, if you don't have an impact gun, it's no big deal. Just make sure before you lift your wheels off the ground that you break your lug nuts loose, just so that you can take them off easy. Get your wheel off, take a peek through that caliper, try to see where the rotor is, and from where the rotor is, you'll see where the brake pads are, and see how thick they are. You want to make sure that your inner and your outer pad have about the same wear, and you want to make sure that from each side of the car, the wear is about the same. If you see that one side is wearing considerably more than the other side, you might have a caliper issue, you might have a brake hose issue, and you want to get that addressed as well. Take a peek at my brake video on the S10. A lot of cars are very similar in how you do brakes. You also want to take a peek at your rotors. Make sure your rotors are nice and smooth. If you have grooves and stuff like that, you might want to replace them. If you're really strapped for cash, you can just do pads as long as your rotors are good. You're looking for a world of hurt if you have grooved rotors and you put new pads on it. A brake job should really only cost you about 50 bucks or so. If you do new rotors, probably looking around 100 or so, 150, depending on how expensive the rotors are. I did see at my local O'Reilly's that they do turn rotors for free. So if your rotors are a little grooved or you're just concerned about them, obviously check with them when you buy your brakes that they have a lathe and that they will turn your rotors for free. So that will be just about it for this video. Those are just some very basic things, and honestly they're just things that I think will save people a lot of money. As long as you look up the right tutorials and as long as you're careful, tighten everything up, you should be fine. If you guys are ready to get down and dirty and you're ready to get registered in your car, please remember to leave a like. If you have any questions on any of these jobs that you are doing on your vehicle, I'll try to be quick in the comments. But most times there are videos out there for these things. And always remember, stay broke, they be creeping. Bye guys.